Cuba, Brazil, and Peru in different episodes.
And like following what Beverly asked, were the racial attitudes then less intense in California than in Mexico proper?
They were. So in Mexico proper, for example, the fact that a man of color, could reach that level is very difficult, very hard. Whereas in California, because they were sort of on the fringe of society, it was a little bit easier. Although you do have examples like Vicente Guerrero.
Can you explain the word indigenous more?
Oh, indigenous. Okay. Indigenous basically means that somebody who is their ancestry is from the Americas. So a Mexican person of indigenous ancestry would be a Native American person. So that's what indigenous means. Like, it's kind of a strange concept because it doesn't necessarily mean Native American. Like, the Native Hawaiians are indigenous to Hawaii, right? Chinese people are indigenous to China. It's just it kind of means that. But in the context of the Americas, it means somebody who's of Native American ancestry. Now Mexicans, because we're so racially mixed, we can in fact claim indigenous heritage. There's no question about that. But it's difficult because our knowledge of our connection to native cultures has been taken from us. So like for me, it took us a long time, and I found out that we did have indigenous ancestry with the Pima Indian, which is in Arizona, but that's really all I know. I don't know much. I don't even know much about the Pima Indians, and that's part of colonialism, Anybody else?
Where did the slaves arrive to in Mexico?
Veracruz, which is in the Gulf of Mexico, and that was the main point of entry. Thousands and thousands, and that's this is a as I'm researching this more and more, I'm seeing there's these layers of debates about African people in Mexico. Some people believe that the Africans were there before the Spaniards, and so there's a lot of people who are sort of beginning to argue this, that there were connections between Africa and indigenous populations before the Europeans got here. So there's all this research that is going on that's very interesting.
How can one find out about their Native American ancestry aside from going to Ancestry.com, which they may not be there if you're African American?
Yeah, there was so much mixture in the United States, especially in the South, between, the Choctaw, the Seminole, the Cherokee, the Seminole especially, because the Seminole and the Seminole War was one of the most difficult wars the U.S. Army ever fought, is because they had so many escaped slaves that went and lived with the Seminoles. And so, how do you find out? It's a tough one. That's a tough one, except if you want to do your genealogy by giving DNA samples. And that, 23andMe is a local company that does it for $100. Kind of expensive, but I want to do it simply because, I want to find out what's inside me.
Right. I have an 87-year-old cousin called Cousin Polly, but her name is Cleopatra. And she doesn't know for sure, but she said, go to that class and come back and tell me. So I'll be able to show her that I can look into it with 23andMe.
Yeah, 23andMe.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I have an African-American friend who did this, and she came out 95% African, and 5% Asian. And she said she had heard that sometimes when it comes up Asian, that's Native American. For some reason, something the way the genes are, the genealogy is. So that.
Well, I think there was definitely contact with the Polynesian people, because the Polynesian people, they got to Hawaii somehow, right? They had to have been seafaring people. So I'm sure they came down to the coast of South America.
Well,
I watched Take Care of 88-year-old, and she's mostly Czechoslovak. Well, what she knew, she was just Czechoslovakian, and her husband is mostly Dutch. And they just made DNA tests, and everything came to them, and they found that she's like half Irish, half some African there, and she's like, no, that's a scam. Oh, that's DNA stuff.
She was like angry. Oh my God. Yeah. And Henry Louis Gates did it, and he's like 45% white. Yeah, he had no idea. He was like, what?
Well, in my family, we know we're part Irish. It's actually the family reunions. And I'm like, yeah, I know you can't see it, but it's in the
Exactly. Absolutely.
My mitochondrial DNA says I'm Native American all the way through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really look like it. Actually, the thing is, by my ancestry, I'm California. I am Mexican. I do not dare identify as Mexican because I'd be laughed out of wherever I was.
Well, yeah, Mexican is not a race.
I know that, but other people do not.
My wife is very fair, and she's Mexican, and it's just we come in all different times. You go to Mexico City, and you see a lot of people look like you.
and how do you distinguish between Native American and Asian genes and other Asian genes?
They're pretty good about it right now. There's a lot of work being done to begin to classify Native American genes. And before it was really hard, but what they're doing now, especially at Stanford, is that they are getting DNA samples of the different tribes, individual tribes. So they're getting DNA markers from specific tribes. And that's in the very, very near future. You're going to be able to tell what tribal designation you have, if you have any. Yeah. There's another weird thing about Native people, is that a lot of Native people who have indigenous blood, are born with a purple birthmark on their backside.
Called the Mongolian spot.
The Mongolian spot. And it disappears about after maybe 3 or 4 years. I had it, my daughter had it, and she, it's just this weird thing that, indigenous people have in their ancestry.
Oh, well, I like history a lot, so I read somewhere that why, if you are Native American, it would show up as Asian because the Native Americans supposedly they walked here a long time ago from Asia and then settled in the Americas.
Yeah.
Because it was the Bering Strait.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem with the Bering Strait theory, we're going way off Pio Pico here, but is that we know geologists know that it happened between 10 and 20,000 years ago, but they're finding sites in South America that are 30,000, 40,000 years old of human occupation. So at that point there was no Bering Strait, so how did they walk over? It's really difficult right now, just in terms of finding human origins and stuff. Of course, Native Americans have their creation stories, so they believe that they were put on this land by the Creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.